the payment is kind of a lot higher, at least in my field. But like with this vacation days, it's very uncomfortable for Germans to think like, okay, but like even if I just stay for 5 years, like those 10 to 14 days, like they are not enough for anything. I can travel one time to Germany to visit some relatives, and then my vacation days are already gone. Like, I guess that's pretty hard for most of them to decide.
Howdy und servus, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of The Pod Abroad. My name is Paulina de los Santos, and on this podcast, I share insights about my life as an American who has been living in Munich, Germany, the last nearly 10 years, and also have conversations with several of my immigrant friends where they're able to share their stories and lived experiences as well. So if any of that interests you, then please consider following along. Today, though, I am not with an immigrant here in Germany. I am with the one and only Stephan Stoiber. Woo woo! We met many years ago. I was thinking, like, it's been 5 years.
5 years, or 2022, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a while. And he has never been to the US, though almost every time we have gone on like hikes or like gathered, I feel like you've always had something to say about the US, which I love to hear because I feel like you just offer such a cool perspective with that. I love to hear it. So this episode today is going to be all about what a German thinks of the US who hasn't yet been there, because I think that it's a really like honest, real value that you add to like the conversation. There's a lot to be said, right, about the US and like how Germans perceive it from over here. And as an American, like I'm always so curious like on what you have to say. Yeah. So that's what this episode is going to be about. Stephan, could you tell people a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I'm 39 years old. I'm living in Munich since 2011. So like the same city you are in now for a couple of years. I'm a software developer. I like to be in nature a lot. Like it's very nice in Munich that you can always like go to the mountains or do cycling or hiking. Yeah. And I'm also kind of interested like in like I would also say like politics or like general field. So I'm reading a lot of news, and like maybe that's also why I always had opinion about the US, I guess.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I wanted to start off and ask you a little bit about the countries you visited, because I think people might assume ignorantly that like, oh, because you haven't gone to the US, like it's maybe he doesn't travel much. But like that couldn't be further from the truth. So what have been like, or where have been some of the coolest places that you've been to?
The coolest places, I mean, like a lot of places in Italy I like a lot. Like also like I visited some really cool places in Spain, and I traveled in Asia, like in Thailand and in Cambodia, which is cool. Really very chilled, and like life is really easy and relaxed, at least for a traveler. Like, I guess it's different if you live there, but like for traveling and being there, it's really a cool and relaxed place. And I have also been like multiple times to India because like via my IT jobs, like I got to know a lot of Indian guys. And like then first I went there for work like 3 times, I guess, or like 4 times you could say, because then it was also kind of mixed between like doing a couple weeks of working there and then just traveling around the country with colleagues, and also like my best friend like from school, he also introduced me in India. Like the first time I was traveling there with him, and we like kind of were 3 weeks in a row in like the northern part of India, which is kind of, let's say, like really kind of rough Like it's
Hmm.
like it's really like I guess like a lot of people would have a bit of
Culture
problems
shock.
with like the intensity of like the cities and like how people live and like how they react to tourists. So it's really like it was it was kind of a shock.
A crazy shock.
Like it
Like that's the
was
first
like you
time.
come you arrive at the airport and then like you already know like yeah it's a different country, but then you realize yeah that's now the first time you're really in some country which you didn't know what to expect, and it's kind of crazy impressions like in every way, like in the way of like super nice people, in the way of like super nice food, but also like in the way of like you don't imagine to see that kind of standards people have to live in.
Yeah.
You cannot imagine the kind of traffic. Like it's so crazy. Like you just walk through the flowing traffic and
Yeah.
stuff, and just arrive, and then you have to do it. And you have just
Yeah.
crossing the street with all the traffic and like they're just floating around you.
And you grew up in Deckendorf,
In Deckendorf, yeah,
right?
in uh, lower Bavaria, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like
So just so
150
different.
kilometers from, yeah, that's very, very
Yeah.
different. It's kind of like a very, like, like it's very weak, like quite, like
Calm,
calm,
quiet.
and it's very like a conservative lifestyle, and like you're in nature, and it's kind of relaxed. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, in being that you've been to all of these countries and have traveled, um, were you, or why is it that you haven't gone to the US? Is it like by choice or just like it so happened to be?
Yeah, like I think like this long distance flight traveling, like I never did it. Like my parents didn't do it. So as a child or as a like in my youth, like I never flew far. I went once to Russia with my mother,
Mm,
right? But like besides that, like we never flew somewhere else. And so as a student, I also like I didn't had the money to go
yeah,
anywhere
on a
to
student
vacation.
budget.
Like I didn't
Yeah.
do any vacations in that time because I didn't have the money for it. And yeah, I also didn't had any kind of exchange. Like I think it got way more popular a couple years after I left university, because
Mm,
and in my time also a lot of people did it, but it was not like everyone is like going to some very far distant place on the earth for one
yeah.
semester or something. It wasn't that common. And so I just started like this long distance flights with like 30, I guess, like
Yeah.
was the first time. And since then I did it a couple of times, and like kind of like because of like the people and connections I had, like it was like a couple of times to India, and like
Yeah.
then you'll have like also limited capabilities of like cannot always
Yeah.
travel
They always say
like
time and money,
yeah
right? Like
and
when you have the time, you don't have the money. Or when you
yeah
have the money, then you don't have the time.
yeah and then like I guess like what always was very interesting for me about the US is like this really like how do you say like that it's so huge that you have like
Yeah.
this like I always have this idea of like my whole life I wanted to be somewhere where I can just drive with a car, and like I know there's no other person anywhere near me, like,
Mm.
and because you don't
Yeah.
have it in Europe, you don't have it in
True.
South Asia, like it's super populated,
True.
super dense everywhere. Just if you go into some mountains maybe, but like
I
not
gotta take you to Texas one
yeah
day. We can drive for
yeah
hours and see nothing.
Yeah, so it was always like when I do it, like then I have to do it for 4 weeks or
Yeah.
6 weeks or longer, and that I didn't manage. And
Not yet.
also I have to say, like in the last couple of years, like
Yeah.
the idea of traveling to the US got a bit more far distant for Germans, and I guess for Europeans, and maybe even for Americans,
Yeah.
it's understandable.
Absolutely. I'm glad you shared that because that's something that's very real, right? That like I mean, you're not alone in being that. I'm sure many Europeans are like, oof, I don't want to go right now. Like people don't feel that they like have to go now. Like it's not like that they hate the US, but of course, like seeing crazy stuff from afar, like it can
Mm,
be pretty intimidating. Like I completely understand like why someone wouldn't want to go right now. I still go, of course, because my family's there. Like I'm like
mhm.
in my little safe bubble, but like if you're just like wanting to have a nice time, like I understand that not everyone would want to. Some people still do, which is fine also, but like I get it. I really do. Would you want to go one day though, in general?
Yeah, if like the situation, I mean, maybe I will also go with the kind of situation, but like it's not that I'm actually planning it right now.
Yeah.
And maybe like when it's more like I know that I visit someone, or like when you are in
Yeah.
Texas, or I know that I have
Something to do.
something to do there, someone to meet there, then
Yeah.
I'm also very open to do it now. But like
Hmm.
it's now not that I'm saying like from all the places I haven't seen, like the first choice now would be to go to the US at the
Yeah.
moment.
Understandably so. One thing that really stood out to me right now is when you said, "Oh, if I would go one day, like you'd want to spend like 3 or 4 weeks and like do a whole road trip." And I find that so cool because Germans are like that. Like in the US, we only have, well, typically in corporate, people have like 10 days of
Yeah,
vacation a year.
yeah,
And sometimes you can gain more vacation days the longer you've been at that company. Like they give it to you as a reward. Like, oh,
yeah.
it's your 5 year anniversary. You get one extra day now. Um, which is nuts to me. Like the Germans could not relate. But I love hearing that you'd be like, oh, I'd want to go for weeks. Cause like Americans like can't relate to that, unfortunately.
Yeah. I like I know a lot of people from Germany which thought about like, because like I guess there are really interesting positions, and then also the payment is kind of a lot higher, at least in my field. But I guess it's in many fields like that you kind of can get much higher salaries. I think even besides that you have to pay like for health and everything yourself, but I think still like the payment can be like better. But like the with this vacation days, it's very uncomfortable for Germans to think like, okay, but like even if I just stay for 5 years, like those 10 to 14 days, like they are not enough for anything. I
Yeah.
can travel one time to Germany to visit some
Yeah.
relatives, and then my vacation days are already gone. Like I
Mm.
guess that's pretty hard for most of them to decide to get rid of those
Yeah.
extra 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's significantly more
yeah,
in Germany. And that was actually a reason why I wanted to stay as well. Because I was like, I can't imagine 10 days. Like, I have it good here, like 30
you
days of
you
vacation,
you had it
paid.
now.
Yeah. Now that I've had a taste of the good
Yeah.
life, I'm just like, you know what? Like, this is really nice. Like living life outside. I will say, like, for my friends in Texas, like, one thing that I have noticed, which is so cool, is that they really like, I, they take advantage of their weeknights as well. Like maybe we like live a chiller life in Munich because we know we have vacation days or whatever, but they like, I don't know, you don't know or you don't feel that your situation is bad when that's like all you know. Like that's how it is. But because I know that it's good in Germany, like 30 days, like
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to, that's a reason like why I wouldn't want to go back. Yeah, it's different. But one thing you also mentioned is like the higher salaries, and that's absolutely true. Like, especially of course in the IT field, like I'm sure the salaries are significantly more in major cities in the US. Um, and you yourself, like Stefan, could earn more and save more, but because you have a German mentality, because like man, with consumerism in the US, like
Yeah.
Americans love to like, yeah, work hard, play hard, spend hard. Like it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's, I mean, and this is a generalization, but like Americans spend money like probably more so than like an average German would, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's also my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that's also like every nationality or every country is known for some things, and I guess like one of those things for the American or the US citizens is that they like to not show off, but like they like to have fancy things. They like to also say, yeah, look at this, that's my house, that's my car,
That
that's
big ass truck in
yeah.
Texas.
And like in Germany, it's very different
Yeah.
because like people kind of have this mentality like you don't have to be a show off. Like even if you're rich, like they like a lot of people get angry if you show it too much. Like they
Yeah.
say like, okay, be rich, but don't show us that
Yeah.
you're so rich that you can afford all those things we cannot afford.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of like, I mean, like, I guess it's the two
Or
extremes.
extremes,
Like the
right?
Americans really pressure also young people into this, and like all these high school movies where you see like if you are poor, you are the loser. Like I don't say
Yeah.
it's not existing in Germany, but like I think it's not. I think it's not that intense in Germany, and also it comes a bit from that we adapt this consumerism culture so much. So I guess it was way less like 50 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, we are on the other scale. Like we are like being rich. We don't know if it's okay.
Yeah. It's maybe frowned
Maybe it's
upon.
okay, but like, please don't show us that you are. Like,
Yeah. Which is, like you said, extremes. Like maybe there's somewhere where there's a happy medium, like an in between that could be
yeah,
nice. That's like not blowing all your money and showing everyone,
yeah,
and not hiding it
or
all
at least
either.
that people respect if you got the money from like really working like for years, 80 hours a week or
Yeah.
something, like that they then at least really respect it. But like, I guess Germans tend to be a bit of like neidish, I guess,
Mm,
like
yeah.
on what others have. Like it's kind of a
Yeah.
bit that mentality.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree. And if a German, like, if you're trying to, like, I mean, stereotype, but I feel like if you're like showing off to another German of how much you work, like, I work 80-hour weeks and I make this much, people are like, oh, like that's really sad. Whereas, like, in the US, in some circles, it could be
Yeah.
like celebrated, like, oh yeah, like the grind culture.
Yeah, I guess I think in Munich, like you will also find it in a lot of places because, but I think it's the adaptation of this culture of startups, of young people coming from university, working in startups, and then of course, like they have all these ideas of it, like how it should be, and those ideas, I guess, we always import from the US.
Yeah.
So then in this kind of like circles, it might be the same, but it's not like the average, I don't know, German craftsman or German worker in a company or factory. Like I guess they have way less this mentality of I work so much that I one day have so much more money and then I can spend it on things which kind of like also are not like necessary for
Yeah.
living. So
And that's how it is in the US when like you have a surplus of money but not time to like really take elaborate vacations, then
yeah.
you buy things to like bring you joy, which I understand. Cause like if you don't have time,
Yeah, maybe
like
you would also spend less as a like average American if you would know that you have a long vacation where
exactly.
you need the money
I
for, and
would
like
think so too.
yeah,
Like I try to put myself in like someone's shoes of making a really big salary and not having a lot of time off. Like I'd probably be spending money
no,
on like nice things too,
try
just
to
to
get
feel
some
something.
extra comfort, extra
Yeah,
things which
to
kind of
feel
like
something.
stimulate you and like
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just a different culture in that
Yeah.
sense for sure. I wanted to now ask you, um, was the US mentioned like when you were growing up in school in any way?
Yeah, I guess like I went to gymnasium. I don't know which
Mm-hmm.
is the
It's like a high school,
high school,
like a top tier high
top
school.
tier high school. Yeah, like and like there, I guess like the general mentality was a bit more critical than like the average German view on the US,
Mm-hmm.
because like when I grew up, you had this conservative party which was like super pro USA. Like they were like, they are our best friends. Everything they do, even if they start wars, even if they do
They
war
do no
crimes,
wrong.
we will never say it out loud. We will always try to be on their side. And like, and then you had like, I don't like, then you had also parties which were a bit like anti American policies or something in that kind of way. But like in school, they were always I guess like most of the teachers were a bit more like on the more left side, not like on the extreme side, but like more on the side like, yeah, of course, like if we talk about it, we should also talk about like gun problem. We should also talk about like war, like not super critical, but like at least talk about it and not
Yeah.
like act as there is nothing to talk about it.
Yeah.
So like you always like in that kind of schools you always get like a critical view on it. And I guess maybe also like, yeah, you learn a lot about the culture because of like the English lessons. So I guess then you also learn about like the good things or something. But I think maybe it's less this, you get taught less about like why is the US so successful or why did it become so successful. It's like more focused on like the problems the country has, I
Mm.
guess. I
Yeah.
guess, yeah.
Yeah. I think that makes sense that like it's approached from a very real point of view, like a realist. Like, I don't know, especially like I've been told by other German friends that like growing up, you guys were raised with like a very real perspective of the war and like we did wrong. We have to learn.
Yeah.
Which like we don't grow up with in the US. Like we don't learn about like Native American genocide or any of that. We're just like, oh, Christopher Columbus landed in America and
Yeah.
we were like we became a nation eventually. Like so I've always appreciated that kind of like that I've heard that within like German public schools it's a very like a realistic explanation of what has happened. They always say though, of course, history is written by the victors, like the winners. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, yeah. What do you think of the US now? Like when the topic comes to mind, like
Yeah, I think like mm, the situation is kind of extreme. Like you have all these extremes, like, and now you have them at the same time. And I guess it's very, I guess I'm not the only one who doesn't know what happens next, because like there's this tech boom in the AI sector. It will, of
yeah,
course, be implemented first in the US. Like, that means you are the first one who really will see what happens when AI replaces everything. We will be like, depends. Maybe it's faster with AI than with other things, but like, we will be at least 2 years, 3 years
yeah,
behind, I guess.
after.
Maybe 5, I don't know, but something like that. And then you also have like this unlimited, like it also got more unlimited what like companies can just do. Like they don't have any social restrictions anymore. They can just like build their AI factories everywhere they want. They will always get like they don't need permissions. Like it's kind of, for us it's kind of like Wild West
Yeah,
actually. Like,
yeah,
and of course that's why the US is always super successful, because they just do it, because they don't talk for years and years how to do it, and we do that, and then
they
we are
break
very
the
slow,
rules.
or we can never get into that field, I don't know. But we, and then this political tensions, like I
Yeah,
guess they are as extreme as they never were before.
yeah,
And I, at least I don't see that to be uh, become better. Like I don't see why it should become better in the next time,
yeah,
because I don't know like I see all the things which worsen it. Like, for example, all this creation of AI slurp, which is like even if even the president creates AI slurp, and it's
Oh
always
yeah.
like on his view of things,
Like the
and
trash
like
videos and like Gen AI like
so that
photos.
will just like make more of two separate entities between like
Yeah.
it will just separate more, like, I guess.
Absolutely. It does, I will say, like coming from my side as well, it does feel like a mess. But interestingly enough, like yeah, I mean, you and I end up reading probably very similar media, like and main articles and things of the sort, stories. Um, the only difference is that I grew up living there, but like I'm not on the ground over there right now. I'm over
No.
here too. So like what you're reading, I'm also reading too, and I'm just like, what the heck? Like is happening? Like this cannot be real. Like there's no way that the president of the US just like posted this dumb video. Like
Or this
AI.
picture of him being the Pope or
Oh
stuff like
God,
that.
like just like crazy shit. Like but I'm with you that I'm also
Like
like,
stuff where you thought no international leader will do shit
yeah,
like that ever.
you think
And
like
then you're
there's
like,
no
okay,
way.
now the first one did it, like
You're
it
like, there's
happened,
no
and
way
like,
this is real.
yeah.
No, I'm glad you think that too. And to be quite honest, like I feel so safe. Like in Munich, psychologically, like knowing that like I can tell people, isn't that fucking crazy? And like they're like, yeah, it is. People agree with me here. Like a lot of the Germans, they're just like,
I think
this
like,
is nuts.
but I think many nations in the world will be more on the agreeing
Yeah.
side.
Yes,
Like,
but like if I were to go back to Texas,
yeah,
you never know.
no,
Sometimes, luckily, like all of my friends and my close family, like all can see through it and they're just like, that's nuts. But like people around you, I don't know, like you just never know with strangers, like who you're talking
mm,
to. And that's weird. Where like I never feel like that in Munich. Like, so, I mean, I moved in 2016, which was the first election that went wrong. And I just remember like all the Germans being like, "Oh, like he is crazy," and I was like, "Oh, cool. Like you guys agree. That's nice."
yeah.
Like, at least I don't feel like I don't know, out of
Yeah,
place.
but I mean, like with Trump, I guess like it's also because like when a German sees someone like Trump as a politician, it's so far away of like what we are used to.
Yeah.
So, and I guess that's also not comparable because like in the US, the presidents were always kind of like open to the media, showing their personalities, making jokes which don't sound ridiculous or
Mm.
like which don't sound unfunny, and presenting their like their charisma or something
Yeah,
like that. And
charisma.
like we are not closely used to that, and then Trump is like this exaggeration of it
Yeah.
in multiplied, and like then it's too much for us.
Yeah.
Like we think about Simpsons, then like we think about
Yeah.
like, okay,
Characters.
that's kind of like a comic
Yeah.
movie for us or
Yeah.
something like that.
No, crazy, right? Like trying to think like with like Merkel and Merz, like they're like nowhere near. I mean, like obviously their own
Yeah.
little characters, but like culturally, you're right that like I guess Germans aren't nearly as expressive as Americans politicians are in general.
Yeah, and I think like the politicians in Germany, like they also have a huge image problem now, and I guess it's also about like being that kind of distance to the public and always
Mm,
talking there. Yeah, we will look at it, we will improve it, it will be better, we
yeah.
will work on it, like, and then you always think like, yeah, that's like what they told you to say so that the public is like not like worrying too much, but can you one time act as a human being and not as a like as a politician which is doing that as a job? Like, can you do
Yeah.
it one time? And they cannot. Like that's
Yeah.
some of them can, but like always in the top positions, like they usually just do, or maybe yeah, they don't want to be like point
Human.
human, yeah.
Real. Which like yeah. I mean, one could argue that in the US, they only appear to be human and it's calculated. Like, even like,
Yeah,
say with Obama, like, it's like a calculated, like, view of showing a human side.
Yeah. You
Nevertheless,
never know.
just you
Like,
never
it's
know.
also show business. Yeah.
Exactly. Like politicians are still politicians at the end of the day. I wanted to ask you now, what has been your experience, or your impression in speaking to Americans?
Yeah, I guess that like I only speak to like a very specific circle of Americans because I speak to those living in Munich,
Yeah.
usually working in high class positions, having like a university diploma,
Yeah.
maybe even having studied in Germany, and like they appear to be to me to be very on the same kind of side how Germans look at the US. Like,
Yeah.
but I guess it's because like I meet those ones who kind of live here now and
Mm-hmm.
who also chose to live here. And I think I just don't know any of those who have like very extreme conservative or whatever views,
Yeah.
because I also guess then you usually don't move to Germany
Leave. Agreed.
because you will only like you will have to hide it all the
Yeah.
time here because everyone will tell you, no, you cannot say that, no, you
Yeah.
cannot do that, no, it's not allowed in Germany or something like
Yeah.
that. So
No, but you're so right. Like if you were like a MAGA person trying to live here, literally, like you would not fit in with society.
I
Like people
guess,
would, the Germans would tell
but
you
I
stuff.
guess like also this like movement exists now in Germany, and like
True.
and we also have that
With
kind of problem,
AfD.
and maybe I'm also in my bubble when I say things
True.
like that. Like,
True. Maybe they
yeah,
would find their
yeah,
far right friend.
I guess maybe we are all living in our bubbles nowadays
Yeah.
and just think that everyone is
We
like
all think
us,
this
but
way.
why are there other people?
Yeah. But like you said, I love that you gave the clarification that like the Americans that you've met have like university degrees and like higher level jobs and things of the sort. Cause like all of those things do contribute, of course, to how someone thinks. But more so like on the lighter side, how have you found like their personalities?
Yeah, it's like I sometimes feel a bit bad because, like, as a German, you are so used to not being extremely polite or like extremely open or
Yeah.
like in like very into inviting and opening up and everything. And of course, like with Americans, you always see that this is kind of possible. Like you could do it, but you're
Yeah.
not doing it. And yeah,
Yeah. But do you
so,
perceive that as like being ingenuine? Like they're like fake friendly?
yeah, not with the ones I met, but I guess at least like when that's kind of like public life, it's also kind of a play. And like of course, like not everyone, like I know that people act that way in the US to everyone and they are always friendly to each other, besides maybe if they have some conflicts about
Yeah.
politics or something,
Yeah.
then maybe. Or like that it's way more used to that, like the cashier is friendly to you and
Yeah.
everything.
How's your day going? We
And
ask people.
I think like partially it's a play, like partially it's a
Yeah.
show,
Yeah.
and
But
partially
a
also
kind
it
one.
might make you feel better. So you might maybe are a bit happier if
Yeah.
like everyone, because like in Germany, I know a lot of times I also felt like, oh no, I don't want to talk with that person because he or she is so mean and I don't
Yeah.
I don't want to hear that stuff. And why
Yeah.
can they not just be a bit more un undirect or
Yeah.
unaggressive or like just be a bit more polite and everything?
Yeah.
But there are also a lot of them which are like really hard to talk to because you just think like even if you're right, you're not always right just because you're unpolite or direct. Like even if
Yeah.
you're right, you don't have to like
Make a point.
you don't have to just say yeah, but it's like that. Yeah, and like nothing else, just not giving you any chance of getting out there clean or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a good example of that. Yesterday, I was on a bus here in Munich, and a mom gets on the bus literally just for one stop. She gets on and she has a baby in her arms and a stroller like in the other. Like, so she pushes the stroller on, she has her baby in her arms, and out of nowhere, absolutely nowhere, a man started screaming her to like sit down for the baby's safety. Literally, like they weren't even talking first. He started screaming at her. And I was like, literally, all of the women in the bus, we were like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
what just happened? Like, and I think that's a good example of how Germans sometimes, like, maybe they have good intentions, but bad delivery.
Yeah, I guess they have like a bad, um, like they don't know how to make a point of what they want to say. Like
Yeah.
they
And
just know
like,
their point. Like
yeah,
that's my point. But like it doesn't work like that, that you present your point and then everybody's like cheering, yeah, that's the point. Like you
no,
made it, you know it. Like
exactly.
you also kind of have to present it to someone in a way that he can accept that you are maybe right, that it's maybe a good idea to do it and
Yeah.
everything. And Germans are more like you should be like some kind of like very technical or very like you just should just process what you
Yeah.
got told and then you should just understand that it's the better way
Yeah.
to do it or
I felt
something
so
like that.
bad for her. She got off on the next stop, but like I thought, was it maybe unsafe that she was carrying the baby with no carrier? Yeah, it was one stop. She's the mother. And like maybe the baby was crying, so she took the baby out, and then the bus came quickly. Like obviously, I think the guy had good intentions, but like bad, really bad delivery.
Yeah.
I'm like, why do we have to yell? Why do we have to yell at
I
strangers?
think it's also this kind of like, I mean, not every German has it, but a lot of
No.
Germans are just like, I have to play by the rules.
Yes,
And not only I have to play by the
you
rule
too.
book, you also have to do it exactly as it's written somewhere. Like, because
Yeah.
that's also the question, where is it exactly written that you have to do it like this and that? But with some things, it's of course like in traffic or something, it's of course like usually because you have this to make this very difficult licensing process.
Yeah.
So you usually know how to do it right. So if someone does something wrong, a lot of Germans act very aggressive because they are like, you know that this is the rule and you broke it.
Yeah.
So even if nothing happened, I will just honk at you after
I'll let you
something. What?
know.
Yeah, I will just honk at the back of you because I saw you breaking some
Yeah.
rule. Even
Yeah.
nothing happened and I wasn't even involved or something. I
Yeah.
will just like tell you
Enforce the
that you are
rules.
wrong. And of course, it's kind of like a society mechanism to keep those rules in place, but it's
Yeah.
not very nice for you
Yeah. Yeah.
because like you don't want to argue with someone about like crossing a red light and then he's
No.
like you are not allowed to do it. And of course, like, what can I say besides, yeah, I'm not allowed to do it, but
Yeah,
there
und
was no car there. There was no car there. And I had a minute to cross. And like, you don't want to argue about stuff like that.
yeah. I
And
have to say, like in the US, oh, so I mean, I can't speak for all the states, but like growing up in Texas, like we're just much more relaxed when it comes to that. And it's kind of like everyone for their own, like, I don't know, maybe you tell someone they're doing something wrong, privately, not like publicly in front of everyone, like, and like loud and yelling. Like, I feel like that's like not so much in our culture. But I don't know. That's like from my personal experience. That was like a big shock when I came to Germany, for
yeah.
sure. Yeah, just a whole other side. Um, have your opinions about the US kind of changed over the years?
Yeah, they have.
I mean, political environment, of
Yeah,
course,
I
but
mean, like, the problem is like when I was in school, I was like always like with the school lessons, I was mainly focused on this politics. And of
yeah,
course, like if you take a very deep look into it, like you can always say there are a lot of things which are not okay. Like you cannot just invade countries, you cannot just like pray the human rights and then just violate whenever it feels
Yeah.
good to you to violate them. But I mean, I was very young and naive, I guess, because like on the other side, of course, like we always lived on the protection of the US, and that was one of the reasons why we could just say, yeah, we don't have an army which is fighting wars. We don't need to do that because like we always relied on the US
Yeah.
to somehow do something to in case we would be threatened. And yeah, so I guess you also have to accept that as long as you don't really like participate the game of world security or something, like you can always easily say like that's bad, you shouldn't have done that. But on the other part, as a nation which kind of didn't had to fight a lot, at least in the last 80 years, like
Yeah.
you of course you have a critical view, but on the other side you're also not really maybe the one who can talk about it.
Yeah.
Because you just like
Seeing it
have
from
this
the outside.
luxury of looking from above
Yeah.
on it.
Absolutely. I want to now transition to something more lighter because of the fact that, luckily, I would say the American people aren't all representative of our government. Simply, like, I mean, like you too. Like, it's not that like you represent the German federal government. And go into some fun stereotypes about people and ask you like what you like if you believe it or not. First being that Americans are loud.
Um, yeah, I like usually with tourists, I guess it's often the case, but not always. Like it's not always the case, but it sometimes, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess for Texas that everyone owns a gun.
Not everyone,
Yeah.
but not everyone, but like a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree. Quite a bit. I mean, relative to
Yeah,
Germany.
relative to
If we're
Germany, I
comparing it
guess.
to Germany,
Like, I mean, like,
yeah.
I guess in Texas, I would know one person in my closest circle at least having a gun. So,
Yeah.
or
Americans are very patriotic.
yeah,
You're like,
they are.
yeah, with the flags and everything. Like
Yeah,
Germans could not relate. Americans don't know geography.
yeah. And maybe they know the states of the US,
Yeah.
but they usually don't know other continents that
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I would say like as a stereotype, yes. I
Yeah,
do,
you ask about
of
stereotypes,
course.
which are
Exactly.
mainly
These are
true.
big
Yeah,
stereotypes. But if I were to dig in it, I would say like, I mean, sometimes the videos online are just like like they find the worst people who
yeah,
give the worst
yeah.
responses. We do have like in public school like world history, European
Oh,
history.
okay, then it's
Um,
maybe a wrong
but
stereotype.
maybe, but at the same time, I mean like I don't know. I feel like also it's on a deeper level that like I think a lot of Europeans think that Americans are just so dumb and that our public school system is just like horrible because of videos like that. I really don't know what it is compared to Germany. Like people always tell me like, oh, but it's much harder to do public school here. And I'm like, is it though? I don't know. I actually don't know. So, but of course the videos are very embarrassing. That's for sure. Americans only eat fast food.
Uh,
What do you think?
yeah, I mean, like compared to Europe, yes, like
Yeah, I'd
because
agree.
like we just started eating fast food in like maybe 80s, 90s, and then got more and more. But like
Yeah,
I think we still do a lot more of cooking at home
yeah,
ourselves, and I don't know, but like also this kind of healthy food, I guess it's also kind of harder to get in the US and more expensive. And
Depends which city you're in for sure.
Uh,
Like if you're like in like California, San
yeah,
Francisco, then maybe it's different. Um, but for sure we have a significantly stronger culture of fast food than in Munich, for sure. I mean, I was shocked that there weren't any like drive-throughs in the inner city when
in
I
the
first
inner
moved
city.
here.
Yeah.
Like there's just no space.
But you don't want to go with car into the inner city.
No, exactly. Like just a whole different world over here in
Yeah.
Munich. I just remember like my first week being like, "Oh my gosh, there's no fast food drive-throughs." Like what? Or like what about the bank? There's no drive-throughs at the bank.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, at the bank? Okay, no, we don't have that at all.
no, yeah. So that was really, really different for me as well. A stereotype. Americans work all the time.
I don't know if they do, but at least they have the tendency to also do over hours for their companies and are more kind of like accepting it if they have to do it, I
Yeah.
guess. So we are more like, you cannot force me, and they are more like, if my company wants that and needs that, and
Yeah.
if I want to like climb up the ladder, then I just have to work the hardest of
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of laws here that protect people on a federal level, which is nice. Of course, some companies don't care about those laws, like
I mean, our current chancellor would like it to be a bit more like
more
in the US,
American,
like that
a
you,
little bit more American.
yeah,
Oh yeah, like with the whole, I'm sure you read about Matt's like now voting, they voted to have like a you can only have your sick note. Sorry, oh my gosh, my
yeah.
English is so bad. That you must write your sick note on the first day now, or like coming up, like it's gonna happen. What do you think about that?
I'm not sure if that solves any problem.
Yeah,
Like I think it's like a nice thing to say, like that it will solve any problem, but I guess it's just like a helpless act of doing something
something.
which sounds productive.
Yeah.
It sounds
Ooh,
very productive.
ooh.
So then they will be forced to go to work or forced to go to the doctor. But like if someone really wanted to skip work and then he doesn't skip because of that, I don't know if he then has like his most productive days or something, or
Yeah,
if he is a very productive worker at all or something.
yeah.
Like, so those who work, like they are either sick or they work, and like for them it will only be a bad thing that you just have to go to the doctor directly on the first day.
Mm-hmm.
And those who kind of take advantage from it, I guess they will not be stopped by that rule.
Mm. I like that take a lot. Coming from the US, I think it's very, very standard to have like, yeah, you have to have a sick note on the first day. So like for me in the US, that's pretty normal, but I loved it here. Previously, like for those who don't know, maybe Americans watching this, at my like last two companies, you only had to provide a sick note on day 3. But I don't know if it was it like that on a federal level as well or
Yeah,
company.
I guess like it was the general
Yeah.
rule. I don't
Or it's
know
like
if
day 3.
I think maybe they were also allowed to make it on day 2 or day 1, but I don't know.
Yeah. It's just times are changing. And of course, people want to do something for the sake of doing something and feeling accomplished as well. Let's see. Let's see what it actually brings. Because I think it's going to
A
inundate.
significant increase of GDP, of course.
Yeah, 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 that's gonna be the solution.
Yeah,
Let's see how the poor doctors like cope with it as well. They're
yeah,
already like overworked and like understaffed within Germany. So
yeah. That's kind
ugh,
of bad
I
in
want to see some
Germany.
results. Like if they're so confident with this new law, like let's
Yeah,
see the statistics like a year after. I'd be
yeah.
curious. I want to kind of finish off by asking you. We've spoken a lot about the US today, your impressions and everything, but is there something that comes to mind that you think Germany does better?
Better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Germans have a lot of views with what they do better. Um, but I guess like what's really important for me would be like that the government takes more caution in environment, like that it really is a like significant thing to protect environment. Like that's I think that's sad for the American people that their government is not that much into that and
not
much
right
more
now.
into maybe even selling nature to private companies which make benefits, and then like the public anyhow doesn't have any advantage of that.
Yeah. I've heard about like some national park lands also like being taken recently, which is very sad. Very, very sad. I like that take as well. Yeah. I mean, I moved to Germany to study sustainability. And because I thought it was a great place to do so. And it was. Like I always kind of felt that like on the topic of sustainability, that it's ingrained in the culture. Like it's very like people are, I mean, whether or not recycling actually does anything in the end, but people do recycle. And like if you do these things in Texas, it's like, oh wow, you care so much. Whereas here it's just normal. Probably because of like, partially the government, education, culture. I really like that as well. Stephan, thank you so much for joining in on this episode.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah. I'm hoping that, maybe you learned something from my point of view. I learned so much of like...
I always learn from your points of view.
Oh, I love that. And vice versa. Like, I've loved it. Like when we're hiking, we're just like getting into it of like, your view. And I hope that we can always, talk about topics like this, like in a very respectful, like open mindset. It's a nice place to be. If you've reached the end of this episode, thank you so much for listening in. What do you all think? We would love to know down below. Leave a respectful comment and consider subscribing. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week. Ciao. The Pod Abroad's video, audio, and music is produced and edited by Tim Teherne. Make sure to give us a follow and leave a comment if you like this episode.